Welcome back, everybody, to Two Guys and a Stack of Comics. It is our weekly What is in the Stack. With me, as always, is Mike. Mike, I know you've been busy lately, sir. Great to get you back with us. Wanted to just
Thanks
go.
for having me back.
Well, you will be on every video you can be, sir. I know it's been a busy season for you. We wanted to
Yeah,
run through our stack of the week, kind of go through a few comic books. But from the top, we wanted to kind of tackle a topic that has been coming up for me and Mike a lot lately. And this issue here, Amazing Spider-Man #4. This is Joe Kelly and Pepe Larraz. I won't cover this comic book too much. I think it's a very meh issue. It wasn't bad. It wasn't great. I think there's some interesting things. I will say Pepe Larraz is a great artist for Spider-Man, and he's doing some interesting things. But the main reason we were going to talk this issue more, and that there's just not much to break down out of it, is that we're on Amazing Spider-Man 4 again. And Mike and I have talked about this a little bit. Reboots and renumberings. It's interesting in that, we understand why the comic industry does this. The #1 is typically a speculator purchase thing. It is a temporary bump in sales. Um, However, I mean, we're getting to the point of just ridiculousness, to be honest. We've had 8 or 9 #1s for most characters. I want to say Spider-Man, this is like the 7th or 8th #1 in a long time. And what's interesting is when we used to get these #1s, Mike, it used to be fresh creative teams, brand new approach, new status quo. They're not even doing that anymore. And that, like, Joe Kelly was writing the last 10 issues of Spider-Man when it was numbered like something like 83 or something like that. And so we're not even really doing new stories. This is carrying over the same old girlfriend, the same storylines, the same writer. I just think reboots and renumberings are actually, I understood the point was, hey, we want to give jumping on points. In my opinion, I think we've reached the place where it's actually more of an off ramp for readers than an on ramp for them. Do you feel the same? How does the numerous reboots, renumberings, #1 issues, how does that hit you as a longtime fan?
I think it's it used to be in the old days when when they would freshen up a comic, they'd get a new artist and writer, and they'd make a big ad, a house ad in kind of like the house ad behind me there for
Flash,
Flash
yeah.
105 when it debuted in December of '58 with a January cover, '59 cover date. But they would continue the numbering. Case in point, Flash 105. It went to 104 issues in the Golden Age, and they rebooted Flash, but they kept the numbering. It was still, it's an exciting comic, but it's just kind of, we kind of get #1 fatigue, I think, with all the comics. And like you said, for an old comic guy like me, it's almost like a stepping off point rather than a stepping on point. So I don't know like how long this boost in sales goes, maybe 1, 2, 3 issues, and then the sales drop. For someone like me, it'd be hard for me to pick up that comic if I already stepped off. I'd be less likely to step on a new #1 than I would if you just get the same numbering, especially like if you're a completist like most collectors are. You want to have the whole run, all the years I invested in putting together all 350 flashes, 340 flashes from the Silver Age, and then now building the modern collection. I'm not going to pull Flash off my Flash list, but if I was a tertiary Flash collector and they kept going new #1, I probably would step off and try something else. And we could talk about trying something else a little bit more, and how hard it is to get that reader back. If your #1 ends up being a stepping off point, you're defeating your purpose.
Well, I think the thing is, I think the gimmick is up at this point. I think a new #1 for a while meant, hey, if you've been out of the game a bit, this is a new kind of stepping on point for you. I look at like Marvel in 2012, they did, I think it was Marvel Now. And they had like Iron Man was in a new black and gold costume, and Mark Waid was taking over Hulk, and they were resetting a little bit of the status quo with some really good creative teams. I think it was Rick Remender and John Romita Jr. was on Captain America. They were really resetting the status quo because things had been convoluted for a while, and so they were putting everybody back on the even playing field of everybody was number one for a while. I think what we have now is one, if you don't do a line wide thing of number ones, I don't think it has a good effect because it's the same random collecting things that you have anyway. And then I think the big problem is those were all fresh starting points where you could literally have, hey, I haven't picked up Iron Man in a decade. Here I can jump in. I think now we're carrying all the continuity stuff over anyway. But now you have a number one. I think if you're a new reader who picks it up, you're going to be like, what the heck is this? I have no idea what's going on because the number one seems to be random now as opposed to an intentional, like, let's give you something to start with. And then I think the other part is if you're a long term collector, it's a lot easier to stop reading issue one than it is to stop reading issue 83. You
Exactly.
as you can see from the background that you have, the Flash CW poster that you've got, there are plenty of TV shows that once I got 4 seasons invested, unless it just starts getting offensively bad, I'm going to ride that thing until the wheels come off because I'm invested. And so it's a lot harder to quit a show that's on season 7, season 8, than a show that's on season 1. And I think the thing is with comic books, I read Iron Man for 17 years and I finally stopped this year. It's a lot easier to leave it. Had it been Invincible Iron Man 800, and I was sitting there staring at a box with 200 through 800 or so, really hard for me to leave. But dropping Insurgent Iron Man number 6, yeah, that's not a problem for me. And I think that's where we're at. Is this gimmick is up as far as I think it's a nightmare for collectors in terms of if you want to track stuff. Let's say you did get out of reading Iron Man for a decade, you got 6 different number ones to find, and you got 6 number 2s and number 4s, and finding that is going to be really difficult. And then it's not even giving fresh starting points anymore. I just think the gimmick is up. I don't really think we need to do it anymore, especially because, like you said, the house ads, they knew you could go 105 because the creative team and the creative direction, right?
Yeah.
One of the greatest sales successes we have in comic books right now, regardless of the quality, is the numbers on Batman have jumped up incredibly, and we're like on 158 because Jeff Loeb and Jim Lee are back on it. They didn't need to reboot Batman back to a number one. That book got Jeff Loeb, Jim Lee. There was 12 covers. They have these huge, like, bulletin board size ones they're selling. Those things are selling incredibly well. And so the whole thing is you don't need the number one gimmick if you actually get a good creative team. And I think all this is whenever we do these things, like you said, the sales just even out. Iron Man has a certain amount of fan base. The number one probably jumps 50%. And then by issue 4, you're right back to where, you're back to like the same sales that an Iron Man title would get.
So
You
my
end up
thing
jumping
is
to different things. Go ahead, Mike.
my thing is like if you're only getting a short boost on that number one, and then everything trails off by 3 or 4, and you're losing some people along the way, like number one of Iron Man or Hulk, and it hasn't been good lately. I'm not going to buy it. You probably will walk past that, and then you might pick up something from the indies instead. Whereas if it were, if it were an ongoing series and you were already hooked, you'd probably stay on. But everything is short-lived in comics now. It's 12 issues, 6 issues, 8-issue miniseries.
No, I think that's the essential problem you get to is there seems to be no long-term planning, and that's why the number ones happen. Is that it kind of just seems they reach a certain point and it's like, we've done 20 issues in a row, probably time for a number one. Regardless of whether the story merits that, regardless of if the creative team has changed, it's largely just like, crap, we don't know what we're doing. Number one issue. That'll bump the sales up a little bit. And maybe that sales gimmick is the only thing keeping the industry alive. I mean, I don't know. It happens so often, there's got to be some reason for it. But I do think it's disincentivizing to keep going. And the point that you raised that I think is great is like I've dropped so many titles because they've rebooted and renumbered Whereas it's real easy to go pick up, hey, Redcoat #1, and Redcoat's still going a year and a half later. It's on issue 12, and it's all that. And again, it's hard. It's easier for Redcoat to keep 12 issues in a line than like Iron Man keeping 800. I'm aware of that. But I think, like I look at this, I don't own every comic of Detective Comics. I pick up Detective Comics despite it being at 1097 every week. I mean, it's on 1097. I'm fine picking that book up because it's Batman and because it's in the direction. And yeah, my box is only like 800 to 1027 or whatever, but I'm fine picking it up. I think these sales gimmicks they're doing, it's all, I think, to just jam the extra dollar out of customers. And you and I talked about price. Again, the #1 issue, you can toss a $5.99 or $4.99 price tag on it, and then we get these fake this landmark episode issue 12 special $5.99, issue 20, issue 18. Like they just start slapping things on it, return it to the legacy numbering when it hits 750, so they can charge you a couple more dollars. And again, I think that is also a big problem in that you and I have talked a lot about price and how price is hurting things. I think when you're constantly throwing out books where it's a $5.99, a $6.99, something #1 issue like that, it does make you drop things. And that, like for me, I'm always going to pick up Amazing Spider-Man. I'm always going to pick up Batman. I'm always going to pick up Daredevil. I'm always going to pick up Wolverine. I'm always going to pick up Superman. Those books I'm always going to pick up. But when those books cost $1 more, and you have a $6.99 issue and a $7.99 issue, that means Hulk stops for me, or Thor, or Iron Man, or Fantastic Four, or whatever else that it is. I think that's the other problem is sometimes they're price gouging us for an extra dollar. You do that on 4 or 5 books, that's another comic that I don't buy. And long term, you're killing the sales of other books. I just think it's a lot of mistakes they're making with it. And I think the renumberings, I don't know, it just comes off as cheap and lazy, especially because the evidence is kind of in at this point that unless you're truly doing like an absolute Batman #1 or an Ultimate Spider-Man #1, where this is truly start of a new universe, it just doesn't really seem to turn into anything long term for folks.
That's why I think DC's all absolute is doing so well, is because they really worked hard to take a fresh approach and fresh creatives on there, and that's why I'm still buying those. And so I don't know. I just think it's a shame that that they have to resort to these gimmicks, and I don't know exactly what the root cause is. Is it because every time the sales dip, we got to push them back up, or is it we just can't keep a well? We know they can't keep a creative team on a book for very long. So all the legs have been cut out from under these stories of these characters that have gone on for nearly 100 years now, 80 years of character development, and and you can't keep a long-term story going. It's one of the beautiful things about the medium that I really don't want them to lose sight of, is that these are, ongoing sagas. And I know continuity's gotten weird and went sideways several times, but that's it. And it's what makes them so collectible and so readable, is that you can have these long story arcs, and it feels like it's gone by the wayside, that part of the storytelling is just not where the producers of this material is at anymore.
Yeah. No, be interested. What do you guys think down below? Do renumberings and reboots, do those affect you guys? Does it impact your enjoyability of the comics? I will say, diving into the stack, what I will say is sometimes they do #1s and it actually makes sense. And so I do want to commend both Marvel and DC for 2 #1 issues that hopefully they have long-term plans for. If these get ended in 12 issues or 6 issues, then I'll take back all the compliments I'm saying. But Superman, huge thing with Superman this summer for DC. Summer of Superman. We've got the movie. They launched a Superman Unlimited comic book, #1. Dan Slott and Raphael Albuquerque on it. And I got to say, they pitched this. They did a YouTube video talking about if you've never picked up a comic book before, if you walked out of the theaters, this is a comic you can pick up, and it'll take you right where you need to go. That's a great idea. I do wish it was not 2 months before the movie, but
Hey,
maybe they'll reprint it. Um,
Hopefully they'll reprint it and maybe they'll send a few stacks to the movie theaters across the country because they will sell right after the movie or right before the movie.
well, and I have to give this issue a lot of credit in that it truly is what they said it would be. Now, I think as a Superman fan who's been reading Superman comics, consistently for the past 15, 20 years, most of this is kind of repetitive stuff. But I think for this, it's full of flashbacks, and there's some great Superman character moments of him saving people, acting very much like Superman would. And then this giant kryptonite boulder kind of comes down. And so as he's holding the kryptonite, his life is flashing before his eyes. And they kind of establish the canon, the major events. They let you know where Superman's at, all of his allies. It was a great introductory issue for folks who haven't read comic books, and I gotta commend him in that I have seen this getting a little bit of people like, oh, it's a repetitive issue. Look, I think you have to do something to try to get the movie audience, and I think this is a great
Absolutely.
thing. It also sets up a really unique status quo where the kryptonite boulder kind of landed in this continent that has now sort of become like the vibranium Wakanda issue, where this
Yeah.
country is now marketing kryptonite to everybody. And so kryptonite weapons are all out in the world, sets up a different status quo for Superman. I thought this was a brilliant move by DC. I know it's not going to hit with everybody, but I think when you want to create a book where you can literally say, hey, if you have not picked up Superman, if you walk out of the theaters, you can pick this up and it's going to let you know exactly where you are.
And
This is the book of the week for me because of that, because it actually does that. It's a case study in what you and I have been saying they should do for years. Will it work? I don't know, but I absolutely commend DC for trying. And I think
it's
that
got
was
Albuquerque on art. It's got
yeah.
Albuquerque on art.
No.
And the other thing is they'll be on issue 3 when the movie hits.
Mhm.
But if you could DC do yourself a favor from a true dyed in the wool DC fan, just make sure there's plenty of second and third printings of 1 and
For those
2.
number ones for folks who are.
So when the
No,
kids
maybe
drag their parents to the comic shop, they can actually pick up the
well,
first
maybe
issue.
for the movie, like attach a thing, advertising comic book, something to
Yeah.
let people know. But I gotta commend them. I don't know if it will work, but they did do what me and you have said. Hey, they should try. We'll see if it works. The
Right.
other one was number one, Spider-Man and Wolverine, number one. Mark Guggenheim, and I think it's Carrie Andrews on this. The art is not the greatest. I'll kind of give a peek at that there, but Andrews is a very distinctive artist. What I will say is, look, pairing up the two most popular characters that Marvel has in an ongoing comic book is something they should have done a long time ago.
That's an idea.
If they have a long-term vision for this, and they set up an interesting status quo where Peter Parker's past has had where his parents they've retconned that they were spies who died when he was a kid. The interesting thing is they have that Logan seems to have been the one responsible for actually killing his parents back when
Oh,
Logan was a weapon of Weapon H and all that. So I think it's really interesting, or what was the Weapon X, the Weapon X program. I think
Weapon
it's
X.
really interesting to set that up. Now, I don't know if they'll commit to that, but what I do love is, again, pair these two great characters. Their personalities bounce off each other very well. It's a buddy cop setup that everybody has the loud mouth with the tough guy. And I think if you restore a little bit of the edge to Wolverine by having him be responsible for something like that,
Right?
and again, getting to that tone of Wolverine's past haunting him while he's trying to move on. I think it's interesting. Again, I could take it back in 6 issues if it falls apart. But I was really excited to see those two. That's what number one should be for. I think that's great. I think both of those were really good starting points for folks. So I would highly recommend those if you do want something that you can jump on and sort of read. Will they be for everybody? No. But I do think if you're trying to get new readers into comics, that's two great starting points for it. Last 3 or 4, I'll kind of go through. Detective Comics 1097. I will say Tom Taylor continues to do a pretty good job on this comic, and he is one of my least favorite comic book writers. This issue really highlights Harvey Bullock quite well, which I really loved because it's Detective Comics. I've got the mainline Batman title for the Bruce Wayne stuff. Batman is in this sufficiently where you don't feel ripped off, but I do love when Detective Comics takes a little bit of different spin and explores Gordon and some of the things in Gotham. Really good mystery setup for this. Enjoyed that. I thought that was pretty good. Mark Waid continues with Chris Samney on Batman and Robin Year One. Again, I would recommend this to anybody who is tired of Batman, who is out of the continuity. Batman and Dick Grayson teamed up. You get all the classic elements, Alfred, everything you love about Batman. I think this is a 12-issue series. It's about over halfway through. Great comic, great setup, a lot of fun. And I will say, pretty good all ages book where you could hand this to an 8 to 10 year old and they'd enjoy it. So I think overall, really good job there. Redcoat number 12. We say it every week on this with Ghost Machine, but man, they seem like they're doing what we've asked for in comic books.
Mhm.
Same creative teams, great storytelling, long-term plans that seem to be set up. Ghost Machine is fantastic. Redcoat just continues to be such a fun book, and I love the little jaunt through history and time travel and magic and meeting these different historical characters. I think it's a really, really good book that I would recommend. So I think some really solid stuff. I'll tease this real quick. Absolute Flash number 3. I did not love this issue. I do think the comic has something new. Mike and I are going to do a long form video talking about the status of the Absolute Universe so far. I will say it's just a little slow at this point, which is weird for a Flash
For
title.
a Flash comic, it can't be slow.
But it's interesting. I think it's setting up some through lines for it. We'll see. But I think those are all pretty interesting books for this week. Would be interested. What do you guys have in your stack? What do you got below? Let us know. As always, folks, thank you guys so much for watching. God bless you. We'll catch you in our next video.
Thanks, everybody.